Hi there, I'm Amanda Castor with Material Girl Quilts, and today I'm here to share a tutorial for this Kaleidoscope Windows quilt behind me. The blocks in this quilt are made using half square triangles, and today I'm going to show you how to create 8 at a time. Before we begin, let's talk about the materials you'll need. You will need 16 fat eighths for the blocks, and those are 9 inches by 22 inch pieces of fabric. You will need 2.5 yards of background fabric. For the cornerstone and borders, you will need 1 yard of fabric, 4 yards for the backing, and a 1/2 yard for binding. Now once we have our fabric, we'll need to cut. From each fat eighth, you will cut 2 8-inch squares. From the background fabric, you will cut 7 8-inch by width of fabric strips, and then subcut those into 32 8-inch squares. You will also cut 14 2-inch by width of fabric strips from the background and subcut those into 40 2-inch by 12.5-inch rectangles for sashing. And then from the cornerstone and border fabric, you will cut 2 2-inch by width of fabric strips, subcut into 25 2-inch squares, and then 6 3.5-inch by width of fabric strips for the borders. Now to make our half square triangles, we will take one of our background 8-inch squares and one of the 8-inch squares from our fat eighths. You will place them right sides together, and then you will draw a line on the diagonal from corner to corner, both diagonals. And once you have your line sewn, you will then sew 1/4 inch on either side of the drawn lines. And I have done that here. As you can see, I've sewn on either side of the drawn lines. And now what we'll do is we will cut these into 8 half square triangles. So since these are 8-inch squares, we will cut halfway vertically and halfway horizontally first. So you will line the edge of your block up on the 4-inch mark, cut vertically, and then without moving your fabric and just moving your ruler, line again at the 4-inch mark, cut horizontally, and then make sure that your fabric has not shifted, and you will cut along on the drawn diagonal lines. You'll cut directly on the line that you drew. So once all of those cuts are made, you will end up with 8 half square triangles. Then once you have all of your half square triangles pressed, you will trim them to measure 3.5 inches square. So my favorite tool for trimming half square triangles is the block lock ruler, and I will put a link in the video description if you'd like to check them out. So we'll line it up at 3.5 inches and trim. Cut off that dog ear. And you repeat this process for all of your fat eighths and background 8-inch squares. So you'll have a total of 256 half square triangles. And once you have all of your half square triangles completed, you will select 8 half square triangles from 2 different prints. And then we will lay them out to create the block. So you will start with one print. You'll put 4 blocks in one corner with the print fabric facing out, and then in the opposite corner of the block you will put 4 more half square triangles, again with the print facing out and the background facing towards the center. Then the other print that you've selected, you'll do in the opposite corners the same way. So you will have a total of 16 half square triangles per block. And once you get them laid out, and make sure that all of the background triangles are converging towards the center so that you have like a square kind of set on point. Then you sew this into rows, so you'll have 4 different rows of the block, and then you'll sew the rows together. And I suggest when you're sewing these together that you press your seams open, because there's a lot of points that match up at one point and together, and it helps to reduce bulk when you're going to quilt. So once all of your half square triangles are sewn together, your block will measure 12.5 inches. You'll repeat this process to create a total of 16 blocks, and then you'll lay them out as shown in the diagram with 4 rows of 4 blocks each, including sashing in between each block. And then in between each row of blocks, you will have sashing rows that include cornerstones and sashing rectangles. So you'll sew the rows, your block and sashing rows together, and your cornerstone and sashing rows together, and then you'll alternate between sashing and block rows, and then sew all of the rows together to complete the quilt center. And once all of those are together, it will measure 55.5 inches. Now to add your borders, what I like to do is take all of my border strips and sew them end to end into one long 3.5 inch strip. Of course, you'll cut your selvage off the ends before you sew them together. But then when you do that, you can just subcut down the lengths that you need. So after you have it into one long strip, you will cut 2 3.5 inch by 55.5 inch side borders. So the side borders on first, and then you will cut 2 61.5 inch by 3.5 inch top and bottom borders and sew those on. And then you'll have your completed quilt top. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, please like and subscribe and click the bell to be notified when new tutorials go live. I will include in the video description a link to a printable pattern so that you can use later on, and if you make this quilt, please tag me on social media and use the hashtag Kaleidoscope Windows Quilt. Thanks, and see you next time.